Good morning, everyone. Today we will be actually starting a new chapter, that is random variables. So far, we have just introduced the probability space, the probability measure, but we have not yet brought in the most important part, that is random variable. I know most of you have already, in fact, all of you have already studied what a random variable is. You have been studying it since your BSc. But here we are now going to have a more rigorous approach towards defining a random variable. So we would approach it through the probability measure or the probabilities theory way. Okay. So for that we first need to have a concept of inverse image with us. Okay. So what is an inverse image? Let me have two sets. So let omega 1 and omega 2 be two sets. Okay, so they are like two sample spaces or something like that. Further, let x be a function defined from omega 1 to omega 2. X be a function defined from omega 1 to omega 2. Now a couple of things. You have been using the notation f for function. Why am I using x here? Because finally we are going to turn this function into a random variable, and x, y, z are the notations that we use for random variables. Okay, so I am sticking with x here. So x is a function defined from omega 1 to omega 2, means omega 1 is a domain, omega 2 is a codomain. Okay. Now we have to define inverse image under x. So inverse image of a set S, which is subset of omega 2 under x, is defined as, so x inverse S is the notation, so it is defined as set of all those omegas in omega 1 such that x of omega is in S. Okay. Let me try to explain it with the diagram first. Okay. So what I have, suppose this is my omega 1 and this is suppose my omega 2. Okay. Now I have a function x defined from omega 1 to omega 2, which means that for every element in here I have some partner over here. Okay, for every element in omega 1 I have some partner in omega 2. What I am trying to do is define inverse image of a set which is subset of omega 2. Okay, so I consider some set here, I am calling it S. Then of course S is going to have some elements, right? So what we are defining as inverse image is, we would see that these elements in S, they are images of which elements from omega 1. So I might have some set over here whose images go into S. Okay, whose images go into S. So I collect all those points whose images land in S. Okay, there are a couple of things. If I have say 10 points in this set, left hand side set, then for each of them I am going to have some image here. There is possible that two of them go to a same point, that is allowed. Okay, so two of them going to same point, three of them going to same point is allowed, but each one of them should go somewhere. You can't have a blank element in here because it's a proper function. On the other hand, you can have extra elements sitting over here in the right side. Okay, you don't have to worry about them. What you do is, you collect all those omegas from the domain set whose images are in S. Okay, so this is known as inverse image. Okay, so X inverse S, it is known as inverse image because you are kind of going backwards. So you start with S from right hand side and then you see, okay, which all elements from here land up there. So you are kind of going backward. So it is known as inverse image. So inverse image is set of all those omegas in omega 1, that is the domain set, whose images are in S. Okay, let me take some example. So suppose you are defining, you have an experiment of, tossing of 2 points. That is your experiment. Okay, and you are defining X as number of heads. Okay, you are defining X as number of heads. What is my omega 1? Omega 1 is actual outcome of the experiment. So HH, HT, TH and TT. This is my omega 1. Okay. Now my omega 2 can be, let us say, real numbers. It can be anything which would have this as a subset. So I can say omega 2 is real numbers. And how is X defined? X of HH is 2 because there are 2 heads. X of HT is 1. X of TH is also 1 because there is 1 head. And X of TT is 0 because there is no head. Okay. So my omega 1 consists of only 4 points. HH, HT, TH and TT, whereas my omega 2 consists of entire R. Okay, there are too many real numbers here. Out of them, we know that HH goes to 2, HT goes to 1, TH also goes to 1 and TT goes to 0. Of course, since we are defining omega 2 to be R, there are many other points in here, but they are not images of any elements from omega 1 under X. Got it? At least under X means at least under this function, they are not images of any element from here. Now, if I define S equal to, say, 0, 1. Okay, S is a subset from omega 2. So if I define S as 0, 1, then X inverse of S, I have to see 1 is image of which points and 0 is image of which points. So X inverse of S would be, for 0 I will get TT, for 1 I will get TH and HT. Is it okay? One more point. Suppose I define S as closed interval 0, 1. Then what happens? If I define S as closed interval 0, 1, then I still know that 0 and 1 are the only possible values in this interval. In between values like 0.5, 0.99, 0.23, all those are not images of any elements from omega 1. So even in this case, my X inverse S would remain the same. TT, TH, HT. Okay. So what matters is, out of my range set was 0, 1, 2 for the function, the possible values. So out of my range set, which values belong to S? Only that matters. What extra values are in S, that doesn't matter, because those extra values are not images of anyone from omega 1. So if 0, 1, out of 0, 1, 2, who all are in S, that matters. So I have two sets which are completely distinct. This is a finite set consisting of only 2 elements, whereas this is an uncountably infinite set. Okay. Still both of them end up getting the same inverse image. Why? Because out of the range set, the elements which are present in both, these are exactly same. Am I clear? So what matters is which of the elements from the range set are present in the set that you are talking about. This is inverse image of a set. Okay, now using this we are going to define what is a random variable. So let omega script A be a measurable space, means you can define a measure on it and basically you can define a probability measure on it. So omega script A be a measurable space and R script B be another measurable space. R we know is a set of real numbers and script B is nothing but the Borel sigma field. Further, let X be defined from omega script A to R script B. Basically this is same as saying that X is defined from omega to R. The significance of script A and script B we will explain in a minute. Okay, so X is defined from omega to R. X is some function. Okay, what are the conditions? It can be defined on anything. So omega can be anything. Script A is of course a collection, a sigma field over subsets of omega, some subsets of omega. It does not have to have all subsets of omega. Borel sigma field, of course you know. What you have to remember is right hand side always has to be a real thing and a Borel sigma field. Okay, I am not saying now omega 1 and omega 2. I am saying omega and R. Okay, so right hand side always has to be R. So for a random variable, the value always has to be a real number. It can't be head or tail. Okay, so X is omega to R. We say that X is a random variable with respect to omega script A if for every S in B, X inverse of S is in A. Okay, what we are saying, we will say that X is a random variable with respect to omega script A if for every Borel set inverse image is in this sigma field. Inverse image is of course going to be subset of omega, no doubt about that, because that is how the inverse image definition works. But now we don't want it to be any subset of omega, we want it to be that subset of omega which gets entry into this sigma field. Is it okay? Then only we will say that X is a random variable with respect to this. Now why we are making such a complicated definition? If you recall, when we go for a probability space omega script A P, our probability measure is defined on sets in A. It is not defined on every subset of omega. Remember? In fact, that's why A was constructed in such a way that if you have two sets and if from those two sets you can compute probability of third, that third set should also be in A. You know, union, intersection, complement, etc. So, this probability measure is defined on sets of, hence later we are of course going to bring in distribution of a random variable which involves probability of a random variable. So for that what we need is, we need this inverse image of every Borel set to be in script A. Okay, so this is actually same as saying inverse image of every Borel set should be in script A. Okay, should belong to script A. Then we will say that X is a random variable. Let me continue with the earlier example. Okay, so we had an experiment of tossing two coins and my X is defined as number of heads that show up in a single toss. Okay, so we saw that X is defined from omega to R Now let me bring in some script A. Suppose script A consists of HH, TT and HTTH, and of course omega means all of them, and of course phi. Do I need something else? Yes, of course I need their unions. So HHTT I would need. So I would have HHTT. Then I would have HH, TH, HT, union of first with third. I would need this union also. So I would have TT, HT, TH. Okay. Union of all is just omega. So I think we are done. We are not left with any more sets, right? We also of course need complements of these guys and unions, but they are taken care of, I think. Complement of HHTT is HTTH, complement of this last set is HH, complement of second last set is TT. So we are done. So this is suppose script A. Okay. Now what we know is x has three possible values, 0, 1, 2. When I say x has three possible values, we have already discussed that inverse image depends only on which possible values of x belong to that set. The actual set doesn't matter. We saw an example here that whether you take close 0, 1 interval, let me go back, yeah. So we saw the example here that whether you take close 0, 1 interval or whether you take just 0, 1 set, it doesn't matter, inverse image is same, because those possible values of x which are in both these S, they are same. Okay, so we would divide completely on the basis of that. So Borel set can be divided into many possibilities. So one possibility is 0 belongs to the Borel set S. So given any Borel set S, I can have 0 belonging to S, 1 belonging to S, 2 belonging to S, that all of them belong to S. That's the easiest possibility. Next is 0 belongs to S, 1 belongs to S, but 2 does not belong to S. Next is 0 belongs to S, 1 does not belong to S, 2 also does not belong to S. Next is suppose 0 belongs to S, 1 does not belong to S, and 2 belongs to S. Okay. Further, next is 0 does not belong to S, 1 does not belong to S, and 2 belongs to S. Or 0 does not belong to S, 1 belongs to S, and 2 does not belong to S. Okay. Then I can also have 0 does not belong to S, 1 belongs to S, and 2 belongs to S. And I can also have 0 does not belong to S, 1 does not belong to S, 2 does not belong to S. Now first question, have we exhausted all possibilities? See, for 0, 1, 2, all we have three choices. They can either be, we have two choices. They can either be in S or S complement. And for each of them, for 0 as well as for 1 as well as for 2, we have three choices and are independent of each other. So 2 into 2 into 2. So total we have 8 choices. 0 can be either in S or S complement. 1 can be either in S or S complement. 2 can be either in S or S complement. So you have 8 choices. So all these are here. And now let us see under each of these possibilities what are the inverse images. So if 0, 1, 2 all three are in S, then in inverse image I will get everything, because inverse images of 0, 1, 2 is nothing but an entire omega. So I would get my X inverse S to be entire omega if all three are in there. On the other hand, if none of them are in there, then inverse image is going to be an empty set. Okay. Now suppose 0 and 1 are in S but 2 is not in S. So I have to consider inverse image of 0, that is TT, and inverse image of 1, that is HT and TH. Okay. Similarly, now 0 belongs to S but other two don't. So only the inverse image of 0, that is TT. Then next is only the inverse image of 0 and 2. So TT, HH. Next is inverse image of only 2. So HH. Next is inverse image of only 1. So HT, TH. Then inverse image of 1 and 2. So HT, TH and HH. Okay. Now I have a very small trivial homework for you. Check if each of these belong to the A, script A that we defined here. You will find that yes, they actually belong, and hence we will conclude that this X is a random variable with respect to this particular omega and script A. Okay. Okay so far? Suppose now I have another sigma field script A1 which has say HHTT as one set, its complement, so HTTH as another set, of course omega and phi. Now even with 4 sets, this is a perfectly valid sigma field. Now if I consider same X, then I can see that inverse image of say sets of this type. Sets of this type means 0 is in S, 1 is in S, but 2 is not in S. So for example, if I take singleton 2, it's a Borel set, or if I take interval 1.5 to 2.5, it is also a Borel set. Then inverse images of all these is going to be HH, and I don't have singleton HH in A1. Okay. Similarly, you don't have singleton TT. So if you define a set, say singleton 0, then its inverse image is not in your script A1. Okay. So we will say that this X, function X, is not a random variable with respect to script A1. I mean, we actually say with respect to omega script A1. So we established that this X is a random variable with respect to original A, which had 8 sets in that sigma field, whereas it is not a random variable with respect to this A1. Is it okay? In the random variable sense, we also say that X is measurable or X is Borel measurable with respect to omega script A, the original A, but X is not measurable with respect to omega script A1. Okay. This is also another way of saying that X is not a random variable with respect to omega script A1. Is the concept of random variables clear to everyone? Okay. Now, to study it further, we need something called as algebra of inverse images. We need some basic principles. Okay. So what does algebra of inverse images say? So first property is X inverse of S complement is same as X inverse of S whole complement. Okay. Secondly, if you have two sets S1, S2, then X inverse of S1 union S2 is same as X inverse of S1 union X inverse of S2. Similarly, if you have finitely many sets or countably many sets, so this is for 2, this is true of course for finitely many. So X inverse of union Si, I going from 1 to n, is same as union X inverse of Si, I going from 1 to n. Of course, the result holds for countable also. So X inverse of union Si is same as union X inverse of Si, where I belongs to set of natural numbers. Okay. Similarly, you can have result for intersection. Another important result is, okay, so maybe I can write it. So x inverse of S1 intersection S2 is same as x inverse S1 intersected with x inverse S2. Okay, and what next? Yes, so if suppose S1 and S2 are disjoint, then x inverse S1 and x inverse S2 are also disjoint. Okay, this is also one of the important properties. And one more property is, if S1 is subset of S2, if S1 is subset of S2, then x inverse of S1 is subset of x inverse of S2. Okay. Let us try to prove some of these. Rest will be homework. Okay, now the first thing I want to prove is x inverse of S complement is same as x inverse of S whole complement. So when we have to prove equality of two sets, what we do is prove that first is subset of second, second is subset of first. So let omega belong to x inverse of S complement. What does it mean? That it means that in image of omega is in S complement. So x of omega is in S complement. Okay, x of omega is in S complement means x of omega is not in S, because that's why it is in its complement. Okay, so this means that omega is not in x inverse of S, because that is the definition of inverse image. If image is not in S, then it means omega is not in x inverse S. So this would mean omega is in x inverse S whole complement. Is it okay? So x inverse of S complement we have proved is same as omega, we have proved that x inverse of S complement is subset of x inverse of S whole complement. We have to go reverse way by following exact same argument. So you start with this omega, then you get this, and so on. Okay. Let me try for finite union. So I want to prove x inverse of union Si, I going from 1 to n, is same as union x inverse of Si, I going from 1 to n. Okay. So again, let us try to prove the same way. Left hand side is subset of right hand side is subset of left hand side. So consider some omega which is in x inverse of union Si. Okay. So this means x of omega is in union Si. So this means x of omega is in at least one of the xi's. Okay. What does it mean? It means that x omega belongs to, union of SI's, not xi's. So it means x omega belongs to union of Si, I going from 1 to n. So this means omega belongs to x inverse of union Si. Is it okay? So what we have proved is the left hand side is a subset of right hand side, because we started with omega from here and proved that it lands in here also. Homework is do this reverse way. Okay, it's exactly the same. You don't have to worry much. Okay. So we have proved complementation, union, finite union. From that you can exactly do countable union, intersection, disjointness, and subset. So intersection is also okay. Let me try intersection of two sets. So we have to prove x inverse of S1 intersection S2 is same as x inverse of S1 intersection with x inverse of S2. Okay, so let omega belong to x inverse of S1 intersection S2. So omega belongs to X inverse S1 intersection S2 means X of omega belong to S1 intersection S2. So this means X of omega belongs to S1 and X of omega belongs to S2. So omega belongs to X inverse S1 and omega belongs to X inverse S2. Therefore, I would have X inverse S1 intersected with X inverse S2. Omega belongs to this. Okay. Again, for the remaining part, that is the right hand side thing is subset of left hand side, you have to again go same way. Okay, so start with omega which is in both and just write down whatever you know, you will reach the end of the proof. Okay, let me try to go back and see what are the other options. Disjointness you can again prove easily, and in fact it can become a subcase of this earlier thing. Okay, X inverse of S1 intersection S2, it can become subcase of this. And now if x1 is subset of s2, we want to prove x inverse s1 is subset of x inverse s2. Okay, so s1 is subset of s2. So let omega is in s1. That would mean omega is in s2 also. Okay. We want to talk about x inverse of s1 and x inverse of s2. Okay, so now I have s1 subset of s2. So I want to prove x inverse s1 is subset of x inverse s2. Okay, this is what I want to prove. So now again consider what we want to prove. What we want to prove is this. So consider omega belonging to x inverse s1. If we can prove that it belongs to x inverse s2 also, then we are done. In fact, in this proof we have to do only one way, not the other way. So omega belongs to x inverse s1 means x of omega belongs to s1. Okay, x of omega belongs to s1. So this implies x of omega belongs to s2 also, because s1 is subset of s2, and so this would mean omega belongs to x inverse of s2. Even though we started with omega belongs to x inverse of s1, you ended up getting omega is in x inverse s2. So we have proved that x inverse s1 is subset of x inverse s2. Okay. So now your homework is try and complete the remaining proofs. Okay, I have given either partial or no proof, but all of them are very easy. So please try and complete them. Okay. Thank you.